Escu, the host of DAO1 Community Hackathon. We are in the second day of the live battle between the founders, the developers, the teams, and I have with me a very special guest, RichardMHolmes, who will speak today about two very, very important topics for early stage startups. How you instill your first processes, and also how you recruit the team, and based on those, a little bit later, how you start scaling what you are doing. Thank you very much for coming today. Let's welcome Richard to the DAO1 Community Hackathon. How are you doing today? And please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. I've been running companies in the tech industry since 1993. Originally in video games, then moving on to social media marketplaces, apps within the early apps in Facebook games and so forth. Some of the very first apps on the whatever it was called, the iPhone 3, I think it was called at the time. And since then, mainly focusing on the marketing and the connection between the real world and the virtual world that we all live
in. I see that more and more somehow these worlds are coming together, which is a good thing, but maybe from some points of view, it's a bad thing. So, for example, if you look at the NFT market, people prefer to buy some crazy digital stuff before even buying their own house or before putting a deposit on their own house. And why is this happening? And why is this relevant to what we want to discuss today?
Well, I think there are many people out there now who are, digital natives, right? And they've been digital natives, literally, obviously, since birth, and they're now of voting age and more, right? It is if you live within the digital world, then investing within the digital world, focusing on the digital world is a key thing. It's ebooks, not books, right? And I think that trend goes through the whole way that people live. However, what is very key is that the something like NFTs, I'm involved in one of those kind of projects, is for people who live only in the real world, parents, grandparents generation, is very, very difficult to understand because they're not digital natives. Where I think the market is that you've got to combine the real world with the virtual world, right? We're not all living in the matrix, right? So the real world does need to happen, and that's obviously where the biggest digital companies, be it Google, Amazon, and so forth, they are combining the real world with the virtual world. Facebook, for most people using Facebook, it's real friends, not just virtual friends. So I think that's very, very important for when you're creating a project, a technology, a solution, is that you've got to be solving something that is a real issue, not just solving something that is an issue for a small, albeit growing market, because you've got to be ahead of the curve, but at the same time you don't want to be light years ahead, right? Because not everybody has the funds to be able to do a Jeff Bezos and run a company for a dozen years making huge losses because the vision is correct, right? You need to have a vision that you can also monetize before you die of hunger.
Or to have a lot of money from investors in this case, the
Yeah,
investors
I
who
mean,
are
if
betting
you've got a lot of money from investors,
continuously.
you need to look after that money, right? Because if you don't, if you give great returns, people will come back. If you lose their money, they're not going to come back. It's difficult then to get back into position. Over almost 30 years in business, been there many times, right? So it's something that people starting up with their first business need to be very much aware, and don't, as such, believe all the hype that you read, and massive numbers coming out of Silicon Valley and so forth. I mean, there's a lot of interesting clauses in those documents that make those values possible, but also not quite as risky as they may seem. And also, most of the stuff that you read, it comes effectively from an authorized press release. So, press releases are a bit like statistics, right? Lies, damn lies, and statistics. In this case, lies, damn lies, and press releases. So be careful in believing your own BS, right? Or the market's BS.
The participants in the hackathon are early stage startups, teams, or developers working on an idea, trying to do something with it. So please let them know about how in such a project you start applying or creating the first processes, and also how to start. Let's say if you are alone or if there are two people, how you start from that point to build a team around you, so to cause the creation of something real, and after that thinking of scaling. So how do you put some processes together, and how do you attract some people around you?
Okay. Well, first of all, being early stage is probably the most exciting part of any business. Not necessarily at the time that you are doing it then, because it's blood, sweat, and tears. But when you look back, it's going to be the exciting time. What comes after that is either, failure or success. Failure, we don't need to talk about how to deal with that. That's a separate discussion. But dealing with the success of going from 1 to 3 people, enthusiastic, team of friends. Effectively, you need to be friends when you're doing this, and then moving on to a scalable business and one that people want to invest. Okay, so this is a very difficult phase, and not all businesses fail because their concept was bad, or indeed, their team was bad. They fail because of team dynamics. They fail because somebody feels like somebody's trod on their toes, by saying something wasn't good, right? You can't have a designer that every time that they present something, you've got to say, wow, that's amazing, even if it's not, because otherwise the designer will feel hurt. As an example, right? The other thing is that you've got to have processes, because in effect, people are investing in a company. They're not just, we all talk about people investing in a team of people. That is very correct. But the follow-on question is, well, what happens if one of these people from the team drops out? What happens if they are run over by the proverbial bus, right? And can no longer work because they're in hospital, or they're in the graveyard, right? That is a very important issue. So you can't just have 2-3 people who effectively will be a major, what's called a key man insurance risk, right? And you can't have it that people are tiptoeing around, and if one person, just coin a phrase, throws their toys out to the pram, right, that the whole company dies. So that way, you've got to, I think, very importantly, when you're creating the roles, the procedures, the processes, you need to focus on that procedure and process, and then say, okay, who in our current team is going to do that? And then that person might be wearing several hats. So somebody might be, the head of marketing and also the head of design, right? But then they've got to ask themselves the questions as the head of marketing, not just as Bob or whatever they're called, okay? So Bob can't say, well, as the head of marketing, I think the design is great because I, as the head of design, designed this myself, so therefore it must be brilliant, right? That is a serious problem. And as you grow, even though Bob is doing head of design and head of marketing, at some point, what is key is that you need to make sure that you are seeing your team and your processes as individual processes, not as people. Right? You're going to need a head of marketing, and you're going to need a head of design, as I said, and you effectively that might at the beginning be one person, but your marketing person can't say they like the design because it happens to be done by the same guy, right? Because otherwise you're going to have a problem when you then have to split these roles. So don't try to say, well, this person will do all these different tasks. Say, these are all the tasks, who's going to do it for now? Because later you are going to have to ensure that you've got more people. So I think that's a very, very important thing. The other important thing is that the processes that you have, you need to not just analyze them from your own point of view, but also from your client's point of view. So if it takes you, 3 hours to sell something, on a Zoom calls and this, that, and the other, then you're also got to find a client who is willing to spend 3 hours to listen to your pitch, because that's costing them. Okay, that's an opportunity cost. If you give them, you can try it out free for a month, and that's saves you $20. Well, great. Depending on the size of your client, they might be using their, cost basis of $100 an hour. So saving them $20 really doesn't mean, very much at all. Okay, so I think it's always important to look at your own processes, your own team, look at the clients' processes in their team, who to talk to. You are not going to be, talking to the marketing director, as a startup just because you think you've had a great idea. It doesn't matter how brilliant your idea is. Okay, and I think that's an important point. You've got to make sure that you understand your position in this. You've got to be solving a real world problem, but reality is that problem has existed up until now. Yes, people will probably be happy that problem can now be solved, but the life and the world, doesn't end. The world doesn't stop spinning because the problem continues to exist because they've never heard of you. It's probably not that fundamental, right? So you just need to make sure that these things can scale and that you've thought them out. Finally, on the scalability, this counts for team and processes. If something takes, a long amount of time, if you can cut down that time, cut down the difficulty, you're going to be doing well, right? So potentially, if you're giving everybody a free account, then you don't have to spend hours trying to convince them to sign up to a trial account, right? Once people are actually using it, then you can probably sell some additional features. That's what the whole kind of freemium model is about. You've got to try to avoid, I believe, some of the big decision issues that clients and users are going to have. Do they switch from something else, some other service, to your service because yours is incrementally a little bit better? What risk is that for them? How can you mitigate that risk for your client? If in doubt, the client is always right, not your company, right? And if you have that attitude, then I think you'll get a lot further than thinking every client is that doesn't get it is stupid. Right? That's not going to do very well. As a pitch.
Which is
Hey,
the
yes, I'm going to buy this is not great.
which is the primary advice you would give to a very early stage startup founder today? I don't know, which is the first thing they should look at when creating their processes, when gathering the team around them, which is like the 20 part of the 20% of the things that will generate 80% of the results. Where to focus first?
Where to
What is the
focus?
low-hanging fruit?
I think. I would suggest you need to have a plan, and I don't mean just a business plan. Having written many business plans and white papers and so forth, one thing that you do tend to realize is that you write these plans for an audience and then you never go back to go and look at them. There's very little point in that, to be honest. Why write a plan that you yourself don't follow, right? Because it's a view from a moment in time, and you don't never compare what you've done. So I think you're much better in breaking these things down into tasks, and structuring those tasks in a way that is scalable. Personally, I like to use Asana for that, and making sure that all the stuff that's got to be done. You can't run a business off Post-it notes or Slack chats or a WhatsApp group, right? That's just not going to work. It might seem very easy at the beginning, but it's just not going to scale. With regards to team members, I would say you've got to focus on the functions that the people are supposed to perform. And then you fit the person into the function. You choose the person for the function. As I say, you can have people wearing multiple hats at the beginning. It can be the chief sales, chief marketing, and the chief bottle washer, as they say. Right? It doesn't matter. But you need to know what those functions are and what they need to do. And so that then the person can focus on creating a correct strategy based on that role rather than based on their own ability, right? If you have for example, you have a programmer as the head of marketing, he's always going to come up with technical marketing solutions, right? If you have somebody who doesn't know the first thing about programming as the head of sales, they're going to always use Zoom calls for sales rather than landing pages, right? So I think you need to decide, okay, you need somebody who's going to focus on landing pages, going to need somebody who's going to do the Zoom strategy. And then if that's one person at the beginning, everything might be one person. That's fine. But then you can just say, okay, I'm now going to I'm going to switch into the project of the landing pages. Let me purely think about landing pages and not be distracted by your own brilliance in programming or your own brilliance in graphical design, right? Because that's not relevant to landing page, for instance, right? I mean, it's got to give you results, not win a design award.
Perfect. I want to thank you very much for this interview and also for involving in the hackathon as a judge. And we'll welcome you in any future hackathon or the incubation programs. And
Great.
all
I'm really
success
looking
with
forward to,
all the projects you are involved
I'm
with.
really looking forward to seeing the projects and what you guys are coming up with. And I'm particularly interested in things which straddle the virtual and the real world, but I'm also very keen to see some of the purely virtual kind of things, as you rightly mentioned, Adrian. Right, NFTs are started out more or less as a technology looking for a purpose, right? It's moved way beyond that now, and is moving into the into the big time, right? It's an interesting field, and I'm sure there's many other such fields coming up, and hopefully some for me to judge. Be nice.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye guys, good luck.